off to the principal's office I go. Yo, you think this is bad? Wait till I get my report card.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Vodcast series, The Principal's Office. I'm Matt Lewis, I'm the host. Great that you can join us today and learn a little bit more about educational life in schools. It's certainly much more than a 9 to 3 job, what we do in schools. I'd like to welcome two wonderful panellists today. I have Shannon Wong-Nizic, who is our librarian here and long-time teacher at this school as well. Started here, went away, came back, of course, because that's what you do at Lidcombe, is come back. So doing a wonderful job on the library, by the way. And Debbie Sage is the fabric of Lidcombe Public School. Been here for, I think it's the 30th year, isn't it? It's the 30th year. Started as a classroom teacher, went to AP, now DP, instructional leader, doing a wonderful job. And I don't think there's anyone that knows Lidcombe better than you. So great to have you both on board. Of course, you were a lead L3 trainer as well, and I'm sure that the pre-service teachers out there know a little bit about L3. Well, they'll get to know a little bit more about it today. But really appreciate you being with us today. We're going to kick off today with a funny story you may have had in education. As a teacher. Shannon, we'll start with you.
Sure.
Something funny that's happened to you in a classroom?
It was one of my kindergarten classrooms, and we were doing an arts and crafts session in the afternoon, and we were using googly eyes. And I was on the other side of the room when one of my little friends called out, Miss, he's stuck it up his nose. And I raced across to the other side of the room, and sure enough, one of my little students had stuck a googly eye up his nose. And I think that's just symbolic of teaching in general, is there's a lot you don't learn at university, like how do you deal with a child with a googly eye stuck up his nose. It all ended well. He was sent to the office, and the experts in the office got him to blow his nose, and it came out of his nose, but I've never used googly eyes ever again. But you live, you learn. I think that's the beauty of teaching.
Miss, I just wanted to see what was up my nose.
And I said, why did you do that? And he said, I just wanted to see if it would fit. I said, well, that's a very good mathematics lesson.
There you go.
Well, let's not do that again.
Okay, yeah. And you definitely haven't used googly eyes?
I have never, ever used googly eyes again after that.
Scarred for life.
Yes.
Scarred for life.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Deb?
Mine is also a kindergarten event. Lots of fun things happen in kindergarten. I remember doing the Best Start assessment on some kindy kids, which I've done on lots of kindy kids over the years. And I asked the little girl if she could count backwards from 10 for me. And she got very excited, and I thought, oh, this is a question she really knows. And I said, can you count backwards from 10 for me? And she said, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well,
I didn't quite know how to respond to that. I just went, thank you. But it was very funny.
Yeah, no, look, kindergarten are treasures, aren't they, really? And they're just so honest, and they'll just give you whatever answer
Very
comes
literal.
into their head. So
Very literal.
wonderful. Thank you for that. Great to have funny stories to start off with. Today we're going to talk about reading for meaning. It's no secret here that, as far as we're concerned, and it's our philosophy here in this school, it's we have a number of different strategies in which we can get kids to read. The vogue of the day with the department sometimes depends on what they push, and at the moment in 2021 they're pushing phonemic awareness as the be-all and end-all to solve reading issues, but we know it's much more than that because of our experience. Particularly in the K to 2 years, to ensure that not only decoding texts, they're not only doing that, but the sounds of words, the fluency are achieved, reading for meaning and comprehension. What are we doing? What do we need to do?
Well, I think it's really important to acknowledge that you need phonemic awareness, you need your phonics skills, you need fluency, but all of that is to get to one ultimate goal, and the ultimate goal is to understand what you're reading and to enjoy it and to really love reading. Like in Cater 2, we really have to build that love of reading as well alongside the skill of reading. And all the way through teaching reading, it's about meaning. If we forget that goal, that ultimate goal, and it's not that we forget it, but sometimes it's really easy to get bogged down in those little skill sets of phonics and fluency and phonemic awareness. They're so very vital, but I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is that kids take their lead from us. And if we're spending the majority of our teaching time being concerned with phonics and phonemic awareness and all those skills, and we're not focusing in on the meaning of reading and that ultimate message that they're walking away with, and building that love of the story and being able to participate in that, then we're really going to lead down the wrong path for these kids. We have to get them reading and keep them reading and get them looking forward to reading. So I think with our little kids, we have to start right from the very beginning with we read for meaning. And early on, that just sounds like when they read the story, if somebody's being sad, they sound a bit sad. And if somebody's angry in the story, their voice should sound a little bit angry. Their total brain capacity at that stage is taken up with that decoding, that phonics, that getting the print off the page. Does it make sense? Does it sound good? But if they can throw in a little bit of expression, if they can throw in a little laugh at the right place, you know you're on the right track of getting them to read for meaning. Mm-hmm. And the way we do that is when we're finished a reading, we model it for them. We go, oh wow, wasn't that funny when he did that? Or wasn't Baby Bear brave to climb that tree when he was lost in the forest? And that's just getting them to reflect and go, oh yeah, that's what happened. So right from the beginning, we have to model that meaning is the most important thing.
And I think Deb touches on a really important point there of the importance of conversation around reading. So it's not holding a book and simply decoding. So much of meaning is made through conversation with other readers. And, you know, we all know that verbal precedes reading, precedes writing. So there needs to be so much discussion that takes place around the process of reading. It's an interactive process. And I think, like you touch on such good points there about whether we're just creating classroom readers or are we creating lifelong readers. And they need those decoding skills to be able to make sense of all those squiggles on the page. They need to understand the relationships of letters and sounds. But they also need to understand that we do this for pleasure and we do it to understand the world and to be able to empathise with other people. So it's this really delicate balance of going with the mechanics of it and the learning to read and learning to be a reader. And I think that comes through teachers who model high quality literature, share those books, talk about those books, and give kids access to lots of different books as well.
Yeah, the two really do go hand in hand. So when our little kids are learning to read those very simple, you could almost say boring texts, they are sometimes. But when they're doing that, they also, hand in hand with that, has to be all those great picture books being read to them. You know, 6 books a day, as many books as you can fit in, that you just read and enjoy with them, that you shut the door and you do all the funny voices and you have the chats and the laughs with them. Because then their comprehension skills and their understanding that we read for meaning builds up alongside of their reading skills, and it shows them where they can get to and how much fun they can have. So it's got to happen hand in hand with us modelling good reading for them.
Absolutely. And like, you know, you go back to, you know, 60s and 70s and the Jane and Tom books, you know,
Digger.
Jane has a dog, watch the dog run, that type of thing. Whilst there are some books still like that and they're important for reading, we have to realise that reading really is for entertainment. Okay? And so when you talk about your modelling and your demonstration and putting on the voices and, you know, the intonation or, you know, the laughter where it needs to be, we're showing kids that it's for entertainment. And with the books that we do have these days and the wonderful pictures and, you know, they're great stories, you know, we should be taking the time to make sure that we do have that as a shared read, you know, where we can, you know, work on comprehension, but also work on the love of reading because it's so important, so important. But you know, we talk about that. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, do we? Because all the other strategies are really, really important. But you tell us why. You know, the phonemic awareness, the chunking, you know, everything that we employ to get fluency going and comprehension. Why is it so crucial that we have this range of strategies to teach kids how to read, so that, you know, their literacy needs are sustained in today's life?
I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that books aren't the only kind of text that our kids are exposed to, and they're exposed to so many other texts. They're exposed to, you know, films, and they're exposed to posters, and they're exposed to social media. They're exposed to so many texts that have, you know, different implications for their lives, that they have to become literate in understanding and thinking critically about, that we have to expose them to those texts in school. It's not just the books, and it's not just the traditional things. We have to have that range of strategies for processing and understanding the meaning behind a whole range of different texts. And our syllabus does identify all of those different texts as texts that we need to develop the literacy of. So there's a lot of different strategies depending on whether you're listening to a text, whether you're reading a text, when you're working out who wrote that text, why did they write that text, and all of that has to start even with our little kids. Even our little kids have to start to become aware of that kind of critical literacy across a broad range of texts.
Yeah. And also, I think, you know, something I remember hearing a lot about at university was every child's different, and that word differentiation, and I don't think I really understood what that meant until I was in a classroom with 21 little kindy kids, and they are all so different, and they bring to your classroom such different skills and knowledge. So I think it's crucial to have those different strategies, because you can never assume the background knowledge that a child's bringing to your classroom. You can't ever assume their access to books before they came to school. So you really need to have this imaginary bag of tricks to be able to cater to all those different needs and students within your classroom, because no child learns to read in the exact same engagement.
Yeah, and developmentally, they won't all have it at the same stage. So it is important to have that. And for our pre-service teachers out there, it's not as if you had that bag when you first start. You know what I mean? It is something you learn and pick up along the way. And any good school, you know, worth their salt, will be, you know, making sure that they're employing a range of learning situations where young teachers can learn those sorts of things and then use them as their usual practice. So don't think that you need to come out with all that expertise, because it doesn't happen that way. And yeah, experience does make the difference, and particularly when we're talking about the different developmental levels. And it's not even that. Sometimes it's the different socioeconomic factors that can play a massive part in the learning that takes place. All right, tell us about the impact and importance of having a range of strategies in your arsenal is for the young teacher. So we sort of touched on it a bit, I think, but you know, and I've sort of said we're not going to have that, but you know, and I suppose we probably want to get into when we learn, we've got to try and do that in the classroom. We're going to make mistakes. Yeah, it happens, you know what I mean? But let's unpack that a little bit, because Deb, you're a lead L3 trainer, you know, and you've seen it many times. Once you're imparting that type of learning to help with the acquisition of literacy in those classes for those teachers right across the Sydney Basin. And you've been in there and you've visited those classrooms to see how they're doing it. So it's important to get it on board. But what have you seen? Like real world stuff, so that these guys can know what's going on.
Every classroom is totally different, and we stand in training and we talk about what's good practice and what's evidence-based and, you know, what the research says, but it's not until you're actually sitting with a child and trying to get them to do something and trying desperately to get your point across and get them to respond to you that you might realise that you've got to try it and say it a different way or do it a different way or come up with a different option. So that's the thing that I find the most, and that's what, you know, one of the things about our training has always been, we can say what we like in training, but it's getting shoulder to shoulder in the classroom with somebody, whether it be your supervisor, mentor, the teacher next door, having those conversations as you work with kids, or taking samples of work and sitting together in the staff room and going, what do you think this means? Like, what do I go next with this? These are the kinds of things that we need to take the time to do, because it's like that brains trust coming together. Everybody brings different experiences, and when you do sit around a table with a bunch of teachers, just add up the years. That's the kind of experience that you could get, and fresh eyes looking at something that you look at every day when you try to help a child, and you've got this running record, or you've got this writing sample, or you've put them next to each other and you go, I don't know what to do next. I could guarantee if you share that information with other people around a table, you'll walk away with a number of good strategies that you could go back, and different views of things that you could try.
Yeah.
It's in that conversation, it's in that sharing of knowledge and understanding.
I think that's such a valuable piece of advice for pre-service teachers, is that teachers don't exist in a silo. You are not alone in your classroom. You are always a part of a team, and you're always able to mine for lots of different knowledge and information. So my advice to pre-service teachers would be to ask questions and be curious. And every staff has a Deb on their team who's willing to share information and to teach new strategies and to teach new skills. So to always be collecting like a little bowerbird, and to be chatting to people on your team who can help you build up those skills, because you're not expected to go into a classroom in your first year, second year, and know how to do all these things straight off the bat.
No,
Like, you just keep building and building and adding and adding.
in fact, doing this work, teaching kids to read and write, is really actually quite specialised. It's not just a general knowledge.
It's so complex.
It's so complex, and it's so specialised. One of my mentors always said, and I keep this in my mind all the time, that there is no such thing as a silly question. It's only silly if you don't ask it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. So really be open when you start your teaching career. Be really open and just put it out there. This is what I'm doing, but I'm happy to hear whatever you want to add to this.
Yeah, and look, we're not meant to do it alone.
No.
Yeah.
That's number one, right? We rely on our team members, we rely on our experience. So hopefully that helps us along our journey. You know what I mean? But you're absolutely right. If you avail yourself to the situation and you ask questions of those who are more experienced in the team, and that's probably the whole team, if you're first starting your teaching journey, it's not a silly question, and no one's going to judge you in that sense. They're going to say, I want to help. So let's be very clear about that. And we've said that in other episodes. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. I just love listening to you two. You guys are just wonderful.
But there also will be those uncomfortable moments during your first few years where you go, I don't actually know what to do here. And that's not a nice feeling as an adult. It's not a nice feeling for a child. So, that's a learning experience in itself. But there will be uncomfortable moments where you're just not sure what to do. So don't put yourself in the silo. Go and ask.
I had one of those earlier today. I wasn't quite sure where to go with it. So it happens even when we've been around for a long time. Every child is so different.
But, I think the best among us as educators, we own that situation. We go, look, I really wasn't sure. And in that reflection, what do we do? Do we go and see someone that's more experienced? Do we ask a few questions? Do we go to professional learning or whatever? We reflect on that and we go, okay, this is what I need to do. We do that, we get better. All right, and that's the whole journey. We don't ever know it all, right? But along our journey every day, if you get just a little bit better, then that's great. Even if you're 30 years, 50 years in the game, right? Like, you've got to be learning something.
That's right. And we talk in training. We talk about developing a sense of agency in our kids, and that means that sense of, I'm stuck, but if I try something, I might be able to solve it.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for us as teachers that have been in the game for a while. We can still get stuck and we can still be unsure of what to do. Certainly at the beginning, very unsure of what to do, but just try something and then talk about it with others.
That's right.
And take on, just observe, just see what you see when you try something,
and be honest in that reflection. You know what I mean? Because it will help you to be a better teacher later on. All right, what have you learned along the way as an L3 lead trainer, or as a librarian, or give you a little bit of an opportunity to plug your online business?
So when I was on maternity leave with my first child, I got a bit bored at home. A lot of napping, a lot of downtime. So I had started a blog that's aimed at giving parents just little tips on how they can promote reading and creating at home, because sometimes you forget how much you know as a teacher and how much of what you do is influenced by pedagogy and just your knowledge of how kids learn. So having my own child just opened my mind up so much to how a child acquires language and how they become a reader. And talking to other parents, I realised how much knowledge we hold in our heads, and parents sometimes feel really overwhelmed with these things. So I just started a blog as a way to share those little nuggets of knowledge.
Oh, I thought it was a business of some sort, but
it was, and then COVID hit, so it became a bit. I used to run groups for preschoolers because also school readiness is an issue that parents get very stressed about these days. So it was groups with preschoolers reading a book and talking about how you can extend that book just through a creative process, which kindy teachers have been doing for decades. So it was just a way to try and help parents, because parents want to help with the reading process, but they often feel like they don't have the technical skills to impart the knowledge in the process. So I just remember so many parents always coming up saying, how can I help my child? And I would always say, just read to them. And so many parents found that confronting, because maybe they weren't read to as kids. They didn't have access to books as kids. So
well, and that's right, and it's so natural for us to read to kids, isn't it?
just
Because that's our
open
job.
the book and you read it.
But that's great for parents too. But so how do we make sure that no child is missed? You know, and that's a great way of doing it for parents. But how do we do it in our roles? Sort of yours as a librarian, yours as a teacher, a supervisor, an L3 lead trainer. What are we doing?
Well, I've sort of thought about this and sort of come back to three main ideas that I think are really important for us to think about. I think the first one is to really observe and not be distracted. So when we're teaching these little kids how to read and how to write, our number one job is to watch what they're doing, to watch their independent skills developing, and to take away what have they got on board, what do they need next, what are they actually doing, what are they thinking? Because the great thing about little kids is they think out loud, you can see the thoughts, you can see the cogs turning. So classrooms are busy places, and there's always something going on over there and something going on over there. But when you've got that opportunity to sit with a little group of kids and read with them or write with them, just watch them, just listen, just take it all in, note it all down, because you can come back to those observations and you can go, so they've walked away with this understanding from the last lesson, but this is what they need next. So really take every opportunity you get within a really busy classroom, set it up so everybody else is doing something meaningful, but then when you're with those kids, be in that moment. Really observe, really try and get inside, have that connection with them about what they're doing, what they're understanding and what they need next, and what's the emerging behaviours that they're trying out in terms of reading and writing. That would be my first one. It's also how they're feeling about it. How are they feeling about reading? How are they feeling about writing? Are they feeling like it's exciting and they can manage it, or are they starting to get a little bit anxious about it? Because anxiety is a big thing sometimes with our little kids and reading and writing. And my second point about it is, take every opportunity that comes along in your career to learn something else. So if you get an opportunity to learn something about reading or writing or maths or anything, take it all along, because take those opportunities, because that's how you fill your kit bag with all those strategies and ideas.
Absolutely.
And then you go back and you look at your kids and you go, who can I try that on? Who can I see who's a bit stuck that this strategy might work or that strategy might work. So take every opportunity you can. The more you learn, the more you'll know, the more you'll be able to try. And the third thing I've learned through experience that I really take back to my team is that consistency of routine is so important. It's not enough. We're all busy. There's all so many pressures on us for what we have to do. But if we only read with our kids once a week, that's not going to be enough. And as soon as you read with them 4 or 5 times a week, suddenly progress starts to happen. That consistency of routine and working out what's the most important thing, what do my little kids need the most important to be developing, and putting that consistent routine in and trying to protect that learning time so that can happen. And that ongoing learning means that the skill level will build and grow, and they'll be in the best place to take it on.
And the expectation of knowing what's coming next,
Yeah.
that significantly reduces the anxiety in the classroom, doesn't it? So,
Yes.
yeah, we've got to do that for our kids, and that's the best way to do it. Be timetable prepared and consistent with what you're doing. But I loved when you said, be present in that moment, because you're listening for what the kids are talking about and their understandings, but that's also where you get those gold nuggets of those massive aha moments that you remember for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And you can pick out those kids, you know, that were really struggling with what they were trying to learn in your classes of past, and you can remember the aha moment. So they'll remember it for the rest of their lives, and they'll remember you as the teacher. But we remember that too, don't we? And that's the affirmation. That's the goal that we're seeking every day, isn't it?
That's right.
But yeah, library's so important too, because you know, like for some of our teachers, and like my librarian, I remember my librarian, right? It was go borrow, right? And we had to borrow, and we had a certain time limit, and then read a book to us, which is great. It suited those times, I suppose, but it's all about information skills these days. And so it's not only about enjoyment of reading, it's also about using reading as a tool or researching as a tool and using...
Creating those transferable skills that they can then take out into a world that's very different to the one that we grew up in as kids.
Yeah.
So it's, really upskilling them with authentic, real-life skills that they can use. And just to go back to what Deb was saying as well, that was the perfect answer, I think. But it's also, I found it really interesting as an early career teacher when speech therapists and occupational therapists came into my room to work with specific students. And I found I learned a lot from other professions aligned with education, because they're gold mines for information about how certain things affect the ability to learn to read and learn to write as well.
The mechanics of it.
Yeah. And so, again, to go back to always be open to learning lots of different skills. But to go back to the library specific, I think it's important, it goes back to that principle of know your students. So you need to know their English language learning skills, you need to know a little bit about their lived experience and what their interests are. Because not often actually, but sometimes we will get a student in the library who says, I don't borrow, I don't read, I don't like reading. And for us, that's like, it's a challenge. Here we go. You just haven't found the book that's spoken to you yet. And that's our job, is to find that perfect book that will turn you into a lifelong reader and that can show you what books can offer you as a reader. To make sure no child's left behind, I think the librarian classroom teacher relationship's a very special one, because you have to be able to collaborate, talk about specific students. We just had a kindergarten class. I teach kindergarten on Fridays, so every class comes in, and the array of reading abilities across each class is just exciting and wild. So you have to know, okay, this child's capable of this child's into these books, this child only reads superhero books. So it's about knowing the student and seeing where you can take them with their book choices and their reading choices, I think. Yeah.
Ironically, you talk about know your students and how they learn. That was your sister's episode.
There you go.
I think episode 2 of the Principal's Office, where Alison Wong was involved in that one with Georgia Matthews. So excellent. That was a great segue. Great segue. Wonderful hearing you speak on all of that, and so very well developed answers. And to me, it absolutely sounds like you guys really think about your processes when it comes to reading for meaning. And care about it too. I suppose that's the balance, isn't it? Yeah. Knowing what you're doing, learning those tricks along the way, putting them in your trick bag or your Mary Poppins bag, but also caring about it. Because if you don't care about every one of those kids in that class and about what they're doing to get reading on board and enjoy that, then we're missing a boat, aren't we? We're not going to get them to be lifelong readers who will read for leisure and entertainment. All right, it's time for the song challenge. All right, so and look, I've gone through the archives to find a suitable song. All right, because you didn't give me any artists. I asked for that.
I didn't realise that was homework.
That's okay. That's okay. Because I think I've come up with something quite good. Now, we've tried a range of things, okay? We've tried people buzzing in with their names. No one ever does. So we're not going to buzz in with names. We've got 2 minties, right?
Right.
Song title and artist, all right?
Okay.
If one of you guess either one, right, then you get one each, all right? But you could possibly get 2 minties, all right?
Okay.
What I do is I read out the words. I'm not singing them. I read out the words, right, and then just say what comes to mind, and then we'll try and flesh our way through the rest of it. Maybe
Okay.
it might just come to you straight away like that. Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
All right. Well, who's that in the garden eating all our red roses?
Sure, it's not a line from a PM reader.
No.
Wiggle song.
She wears a floppy white hat.
Dorothy the dinosaur.
Oh, yes. By the...
Wiggle.
Yes, you get one too. All right, fantastic. See, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
So many years on kindergarten, you surely would have done Wiggles, and of course young people at home.
My 4-year-old
Well, no,
went to
they're
the
not.
state just a few weeks ago.
Oh right,
And
okay.
they're early childhood teachers by trade originally, so they know about the importance of reading and phonics and rhyme.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect segue.
Well done. You both got a minty. Fantastic. Great that that wasn't a flop. But I did choose the right song. But look, it's been amazing listening to you today, and that's why I've invited you along as panelists today, because what you say with a great depth of meaning, great depth of experience, but also a great deal of enthusiasm, and that's what we want our young teachers to be. So, as far as showing our pre-service teachers what it means to be a great teacher, you've done that today, and have been fantastic. Like to thank Erwin Manalo, who is our executive producer for the Principal's Office. Of course, at the end of this episode, you'll see the credits roll up, and then down the bottom, subscribe, because the more subscribers we get, the better it is for, I suppose, pre-service teachers all around Australia, hopefully, fingers crossed. But certainly wonderful to have Shannon Wong-Nizic with us today, and Debbie Sage, wonderful panellists, did a great job, and I'm sure you've learnt a lot today. But it's not about learning something just today, it's learning something every day and being that lifelong learner, because as soon as you get to a stage where you think you know everything, it's probably time to retire.
Yeah.
All right. So, but anyway, thank you so much, ladies, for being with us today, and thank you for joining us on the Principal's Office. See you later.
It's off to the principal's office you go. It's off to the principal's office.